Our last piece with complex numbers and imaginary numbers is how do we multiply and divide them? And for this, I really want to make sure you're able to do it, just do it on your calculator. You can multiply and divide these by hand, however, they can become incredibly time consuming. And since my main goal here is to get you ready for an ACT test where you're allowed to use a graphing calculator, I would rather just show you those steps to save time. So with these, I have some directions up here. Honestly, we're going to just strictly do the calculator instead. The biggest thing to keep in mind is you have to make sure that you use parentheses appropriately, and you have to make sure your calculator is in the right mode. So let's start with that. Let's go to the calculator. So you want to make sure that your calculator is actually set up to work with these imaginary values or their complex values. So if you go to the mode button, which is the upper left button, it's right next to the second key, and you'll see this screen that'll talk about all the default modes that the calculator's in. You want it to be in the mode that says A plus BI. So instead of the real, where it says real right here on the left, you want to scroll down and you want to go on top of where it says A plus BI and hit enter. And what that will do is it will ensure that your calculator will work with imaginary numbers, whether you type them in or whether they're answers that you get on your calculator. And you can actually leave it in this mode the entire course. It does not hurt anything by keeping it in this mode. So then we're going to quit out of this. So if we want to multiply, so if you look at the first one, it says 2i, parentheses, -1 plus 3i. So you're going to type in 2. Your I button is you're going to hit second, and then you're going to hit the decimal point. So the decimal point's in the very bottom row in the middle. That is how you get the I to show up on your screen, second and the decimal point. And then parentheses, -1 plus 3i, again, second and the decimal point. And it'll give you your answer. And it always writes your answer in what they consider like their basic standard form. It will always put the number without the I piece first, and then it will put the imaginary piece second. So you get -6 minus 2i, -6 minus 2i. For the next one, you're going to type in parentheses 6 plus 3i, parentheses. The biggest thing with this is just make sure you type it in right. Make sure you know where the buttons are. 4 minus 3i, parentheses, hit enter. You get 33 minus 6i, 33 minus 6i. Next one is just like one of the ones we did, so I'm going to skip over it just so you're not watching quite as much. Last one, I'll do the last one just so you can see it one more time. So 1 plus 2i. And again, make sure it's in parentheses appropriately. Make sure you're hitting the I button. 2 minus I. We get 4 plus 3i. So really quick, really easy. Couple special types, they really don't change your process at all. If you're multiplying two binomials where they're identical except for one is a plus and one is a minus, you're going to notice that you get a very simple answer. And I just want to do one like that just so you expect it and don't think you did something wrong. So you're going to type in 5 plus 3i in parentheses and then 5 minus 3i. And when you do that, you get 34. Do not be surprised when you have something like this where one is positive and one is negative. You will get an answer that is a real answer only, meaning it will not have any I part. If you have something written squared, you're going to type it in exactly the way you see it. So you're going to use your parentheses, 5 minus 2i, and then your squared button, and that's it. So that it's not going to be any harder. I just want you to realize that we could write it as distributing, foiling, squaring. You're still going to use your calculator. So 21 minus 20i. So that's all you're multiplying. Again, very much focus on making sure you know how to enter in your calculator. If it's dividing, basically the same thing. The biggest thing with this is making sure that you correctly use parentheses. So when you enter these in your calculator, you want to make sure your entire numerator is in one set of parentheses and your entire denominator is in another. So I'm just going to kind of go through and mark these. If you do not use parentheses correctly, you will get a wrong answer or you'll get an error. You'll basically get a big mess. So you want to make sure parentheses are used right. I also want to show you a little bit with simplifying when you do this. So we're going to type in 9 plus 12i. Again, the I button, second and the decimal point, parentheses, divided by parentheses 3i. Making sure the top and the bottom are each in their own parentheses. So you get 4 minus 3i. Next one, if you go ahead and do it on your own, or if you want to do it ahead of me, I want to show you how messy it starts out as and how we make it not so messy. So we're going to type in the top 2 plus 3i. I also want you to see this just so when this happens, if this happens, you don't think you did something wrong. 1 minus 4i, close the parentheses. So you get this, which is really hard to read. Basically, you have such a big decimal that it takes up too much of the screen. So your options are you could scroll over and keep the decimals, or you can convert this to a fraction form, which is going to be way easier to read, and it's also going to be way easier to write. Here's how you do this. You're going to go, once you're here and you've done all this, you're going to go to the math button, which is the third one down in the left column, and you want to make it a fraction, which is the very first option. So you're going to hit enter twice. That is going to be way easier to write. So negative 10 over 17 plus 11 over 17i, negative 10 17 plus 11 over 17i. I wanted to show you one like that, and that will happen sometimes where you get these horrible looking decimals, and if you utilize the fraction button, it's so much easier to work with. This next one isn't quite as messy, but I'm still going to show you the same thing just so you get to see one more. So 5 minus 2i divided by parentheses 3 plus 4i. That's not bad. You could definitely write the decimal and you'd be completely correct. But if you want to write it as a fraction, you go to math, fraction, you're going to hit enter twice, and it will write it a little easier. I think in this case, the decimal's not bad either. So 7 over 25 minus 26 over 25i. So when you do these on Delta Math, it's going to ask you to make sure you write your answer in A plus BI form. And you'll notice that when you use your calculator, your answers are already in that form. So it's another really nice way to be able to use your calculator and get your answer quickly. That's the end of 4.8.